In this episode of Cole's Corner, accountability and adaptability, why you have to be able to shift for the sake of longevity and how sports leagues are handling it. Plus, he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve, from the authenticity of high school sports to the state of Major League Baseball. Meet our next guest right here in just a few minutes. Welcome in. You are now in Cole's Corner. Great to have you today, however or whenever you may be listening or watching. You know, you could be watching my handsome face on the Cole's Corner YouTube channel. And I say this and I have to pump it up because I got called handsome yesterday. Not by my lovely girlfriend, but by three-time Olympic gold medalist Kerri Walsh-Jennings. If you don't know who she is, she's a gold medalist. That's all you have to know. Yeah, it seriously happened. I'm not even kidding. So I'm jumping in and out of all these video chat breakout rooms with these Olympic athletes who are sponsors for KT tape. That's the athletic tape stuff you see on athletes always wearing on shoulders and stuff, on legs. Yeah, well, yeah, apparently Walsh-Jennings was their first ever athlete sponsor years and years ago. So I literally just got home from work, so I'm in my whole suit and tie getup. Just came off air. I don't even know what I'm going to walk into. I was very ill prepared for this. I just got an email invitation a few days earlier that said Olympics, and boom, you got me at there. Olympics, I'll be there. So I hop in a breakout room, and Kerri Walsh-Jennings is sitting there, and her 2021 partner, Brooke Sweat. And what do you know? I'm one of the only three people in the room, so I get to ask the second question. No idea what I'm going to say. So 30 seconds later, I spit out some bullshit question. They answer. I say thank you and good luck like the good gentleman that I am. And then Kerri Walsh-Jennings says, "You look very handsome, by the way," while I'm turning my camera off. So I quickly turn it back on and say, "Oh my God, thank you." I'm like, are you kidding? That's so goddamn cool. Now my new favorite sport is going to be beach volleyball in the Tokyo Olympics in July and August. Cool with me. Thanks, Kerri. Anyways, moral of the story is I had to adapt and adjust because, unknown to me at the time, I would get the chance to ask a second question. So I'm all being weird, smiling like a little chubby boy who's first in line for lunch, and I just asked a subpar question at best the first time around. So now the pressure is on me to not look like an idiot and ask a good question while I'm trying not to stare at Kerri Walsh-Jennings, who just called me handsome. Turns out the second question was much better. I adapted in a short turnaround. With that being said, hey, Kerri Walsh-Jennings adapts well too. She's a three-time Olympic gold medalist. Throw a 2016 bronze on there as well. She had to adapt to Tokyo getting canceled in 2020. Now she's going to kick ass in 2021 by adapting to the change. She's had to adapt and adjust to playing with a new partner in Brooke Sweat. She's won medals with like 3 different partners over the years. When it comes to the major 4 sports leagues, we have seen a complete evolution of all those sports in just the past decade. Football, basketball, baseball have all evolved a ton just in my time. Only 24 years old and lived through an evolution of sport. Football is much less physical with all the contact, the hit to the head rules. It gives a large advantage to the offense. It's all about protecting the quarterback now. They didn't give a shit about quarterbacks in the 80s, 90s, even early in the 2000s. Now it's a game, a game's on the line, a minute left. I'm putting my money on the offense to score and win because there's going to be penalties. You could have a 25-yard pass interference call. Hockey is less physical. No more brawls that roll over the glass into the crowd. Basketball is all about the 3. Steph Curry almost single-handedly changed about how the NBA works. Teams are going to pick a guard who can shoot. They put 4 guys out on the floor that can pull up in transition at any moment instead of feeding a big man down low. The 5 position is almost fully depleted. Doesn't exist. There's something sexy about the 3 ball instead of what used to be bully ball. Why take a 2 when you can get a 3, right? It's analytics taking over. And baseball is all about the analytics now. The science behind it is fascinating. Guys are changing their throwing motion. They're throwing harder than ever. Guys are hitting balls harder and farther than ever. But there's a caveat in all this. There's a caveat with all these sports. These changes sometimes turn people off. There's an unsexiness about the NFL being less physical. There's a turnoff in the NBA when nobody is battling down low, and it's a 130 to 125 game with no defense being played. It's not always intriguing when the entire infield is on the right side of the field. and a defensive shift in Major League Baseball. People want more base runners and more action. I will say these leagues did an incredible job adapting to the pandemic in 2020. The bubble, the no fans, they made it work when we needed sports the most. They made it work. Not to mention the baby of pro sports, which is on the rise. The UFC and Dana White took the crown in this by starting its own fight island in Saudi Arabia. The thing is with all these major leagues is that if they're going to evolve and shift the way sports work, there's one thing they need to adapt to. They have got to let the guys play. Let the big personalities shine. We have to be okay with a guy pimping out a home run or flexing his muscles. We have to be okay with a staged team celebration after a touchdown or an interception. Sometimes, especially in baseball, it gets rigid. With all the analytics, you have to just let the stars shine and, compete in an entertaining way. I just watched a guy, Nick Castellanos of the Cincinnati Reds, get suspended for 2 games after flexing over a catcher after a play at the plate. You can't get that rigid in the state of Major League Baseball today when you're trying to reel the young fans back in. Just like a kid going off to college away from home for the first time. We all have to adapt. And I think there's some things that these Major League sports leagues have to adjust to. We will get more into it with our guest today who has some thoughts on this as well, but not before we tackle a bit of tomorrow's exciting NFL draft. So let's get into it. All right, and that brings in Nick Karski, my man from Central New York, ESPN Ithaca Radio, play-by-play announcer / station manager. He does a lot. He's got a lot of tricks up his sleeve. But, Nick, how are you doing today?
My man, I'm doing exceptional. How about yourself? You doing all right?
I'm doing all right, sitting here in this empty townhouse in the desert Southwest.
I love it, though. I mean, how are you handling the heat first and foremost? Has it reached 100 yet? Have you gotten to triple digits yet?
We have probably twice, and weird because right now it's actually only in the 70s. It's cool in Yuma, Arizona right now. We're at about
Cool.
76, 76 degrees, and then we're going to hit a potential 105 degrees by Friday.
That's insane. Here I am in the central New York region, and it hit, I think, 72, 73 today. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, we've got a heat wave going on. But that's a cool day for you, and I shouldn't be surprised on that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite the change from living in Central New York for 23 years, 24 years. So,
sure.
All right, Nick. Well, let's get this thing rolling. I mean, we got a lot to get to, but pressing subject is the NFL draft on Thursday. And I know you're into football. You're a big Bills guy. So let's hop into this. We're a day out from the draft. Your thoughts on this draft compared to previous years? I mean, last time we saw 5 quarterbacks in the first round was in 2018, and that's where your man Josh Allen was. But Lamar Jackson was taken at 32, so it was spread out across. This year has the potential of having 5 guys going in the top 10. This is going to be crucial for some organizations. Don't forget, history tells us that at least 2 of the 5 are going to bust. Your initial thoughts about the hysteria and the unknown about this draft coming up tomorrow, and someone's going to mess this thing up.
Well, and that's the thing about the NFL draft, right? I mean, let's face it, we have no idea what's going to happen. We have no idea what the projections are saying. And, well, I mean, we know what the projections are saying, but we don't know how accurate they're going to be. And frankly, we won't know if these picks work out until 3, 4, 5 years after they happen. So when you look at the quarterback class, I mean, I think it's indicative of just the quarterback carousel that the NFL has been going through this entire offseason. Guys jumping ship from here, there, and everywhere, and guys getting traded from here to there. And, it's just been a whirlwind sort of offseason in the National Football League with quarterbacks going to different places. And I feel like that continues here in the NFL draft, where you're seeing a lot of these teams really trying to dive all in, knee deep to try and win over some of these prospects and get some of these hot commodities. Like, let's face it, we all know what number 1 and number 2 is going to hold with Trevor Lawrence and not Justin Fields and Zach Wilson. But after that, when it comes to, Mac and Justin Fields and those guys, it's like, all right, well, where are they going to end up? I saw a mock draft that came out today that had that had Justin Fields somehow magically falling number 32 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, I mean, who knows if that's going to happen? I highly doubt that's going to happen. But at the same time, you look at some of the teams after the top 3 or 4 picks, and you think to yourself, well, maybe they could use a quarterback, but they don't necessarily need a quarterback. And it's just, I don't know. That's just the nature of the NFL draft year after year. And we haven't seen a loaded or stacked quarterback class, as you mentioned, since, 2018. And how did that work out for a lot of those guys? Well, Josh Rosen, he was a bust. Josh Allen, he obviously has worked out. Sam Darnold, I feel like, is still possibly a work in progress. Lamar, obviously, he went late, but he's obviously shown flashes of being one of the best athletes in the National Football League. And who else am I missing here from this draft class? But
Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield, thank you very much. Or first overall, duh, of course. And he's obviously, led Cleveland to new heights. So I never know what to expect. I never look at the NFL draft, and I never try to be that person who wants to, I mean, quite frankly, if I'm being honest with you, wants to analyze this little detail and figure out what the needs are of this team and that team. I let this thing play out. And I think that's the beauty of it, at least from my perspective, is here are all these college kids that are expected to make an immediate impact as soon as they come out of college ball, especially those early round picks. It's expected and anticipated that these athletes are going to make an immediate impact for the team that drafts them. And that's what makes the NFL draft so much different than the Major League Baseball draft. You got kids who get drafted from the MLB draft. They go through the farm system 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Then you finally see them if they're lucky enough to even reach major leagues. With the NHL draft, obviously a team has the rights to a player, but you're not going to see them for a bit because chances are they might be playing some college hockey. And then the NBA, you've got the lottery. I mean, sometimes you'll see some of these guys, sometimes you won't. So I think that's what makes the NFL draft so fun for me, is seeing that so many teams are relying on the duty of these players in the immediate future. And as the animals are starting to get wild here, trying to chime in about it, I don't know if they're just against,
They got something to say.
They've got something to say, apparently. But, and that's just it. Like, I try to take a step back, and I try not to dive too deep into, all right, what are the Giants going to do? All right, are the Broncos going to trade up to try and get a Justin Fields or something like that? Because that's the fun of it, man. Like, we just don't know what's going to happen. And when something happens that takes us by surprise, that's the fun of it. Like, that's what makes this whole process so interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, something about these guys that pick apart piece by piece these college kids coming out of school. They're now reports coming out. The last couple of days, the talk has been Devonta Smith is too small.
Sure.
The guy just won a Heisman Trophy, and he was by far the best player in college football last year. He was scoring. I was just watching some highlights. It was Mac Jones highlights. I was looking at some Mac Jones highlights.
Yeah.
I think the highlight reel was 60% Devonta Smith. He's scoring 3 touchdowns a game at will. And now we're talking about, he might slip into the 20s because he's not big enough. I mean, a playmaker's a playmaker. If he gets hurt, that doesn't – I heard him on First Take today. They brought him on, and he was saying, you can get injured whether you're 250 pounds, 6'5", or you're as small as he is. It doesn't pick and choose. Injury doesn't pick and choose how big you are. So it's stuff like that, and it leads me to my next point is you're like, the draft is so fascinating because something can crazy happen. And so this is where I ask you, how closely are yourself and other poor old Bills fans watching this? How closely are you watching this draft and looking at what Bill Belichick is going to do in New England and how he could potentially be, stirring some screws here, trading up, get a quarterback that, God forbid, it starts another New England thing and you guys are just pounding yourself in the head again?
Don't care. Don't care.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because I personally believe if they make a move to bring a quarterback in, I think it genuinely will take a few years to groom that player into a higher tier athletic sort of guy.
Mm,
The Buffalo Bills are in a win now situation. They reached the AFC Championship. They've got basically everybody returning and some people taking the hometown discount. So if Buffalo can just do, even just a tiny bit, if they can repeat just even ever so slightly what they did a season ago, they're going to be in great shape
mm.
for not just, winning the AFC, but also contending for a Super Bowl. And yes, from the outside looking in, I'm naturally going to be interested to see what, Bill Belichick decides to do. I mean, this was the first time in forever they basically said, all right, we're going to pay you, 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 we're going to pay you during the offseason, and just literally brought in every free agent and their mother to New England. And I commend them for that because they realized, hey, we're in a situation now where we might not be the talk of the town. We might be in a situation where we stay at the 7-9 mark for a few seasons unless we decide to make a move or two. And instead they made a boatload of moves. It was like 8, 9, 10 moves, something ridiculous like that. So um like I said, from the outside looking in, I'm going to be curious to see what New England does. But at the same time, I just worry about the Bills and how they improve the team, what sort of deals they potentially make, what sort of players they draft. Are they going to be high quality sort of ball players? Are they going to be high quality people off the field? Because that's something that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott always seem to preach is they want good guys in the locker room and good guys outside of the locker room too. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun, and that's the reason why I enjoy the NFL draft as much as I do, because there's so much uncertainty and it's all about the ride that's taking place in front of us.
Yeah, and so the Bills have the 30th pick, I believe.
Yeah,
So,
number 30.
real quick, do you have anyone in mind? Anyone that you are like, hey, if he slips, cool, we'll take him? Or are you just going to see what happens, see how the cards fall, and you'll see what guys you rake up?
I mean, let's face it, when it comes to a needs standpoint, the Bills need an edge rusher. It'd be nice for them to potentially go after a cornerback to be opposite of Tre'Davious White, to which the Bills already have one of the top secondaries, I think, in the National Football League, probably top
Yeah.
five. Um, a lot of people are really pointing their finger at Travis Etienne of Clemson, and as much as I don't want to necessarily think he needs to be in Buffalo, and I want to believe in guys like Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, a part of me lately over the last couple days I've thought to myself, it wouldn't be a bad pick at number 30 if he's there. And Brandon Beane, the GM of the Bills, recently was quoted as saying something along the lines of, Singletary and Moss aren't necessarily the home run hitters that we have on the team or are hoping for, or something like that, something along those lines. So was he, blowing some smoke? Was he, dead serious about it? Was like, what direction do you want to take that quote? So I don't know. It's one of those things where I try not to get enamored with the quote unquote sexy name, but Travis Etienne, the way that I've seen him play for Clemson and the way that I've seen him beat up Syracuse over the last few years on the ground, a part of me is kind of like, I wouldn't mind having this guy on my team, and that stinks because I'm somebody who wants to believe, like I said, in Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, because they've been here Moss for 2 years now and Singletary for a few more years after that. But I don't know, maybe it's the right move. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and he is a pretty special player. I will say it's not that hard to run all over the Syracuse football defense, but
That too.
that's
That too.
that's besides the point. Anyway, Nick. All right, so we got some Bills talk out of the way. We'll see what they do at 30. You could go a lot of directions. You said cornerback. It's a pretty good cornerback draft. There's a lot of guys out there, but let's shift to this. I want to talk some baseball with you. It's something that I've like to discuss especially the last year or so, 2 years. Analytics has been something that's taken over the game of baseball, right?
Yeah.
Where do you stand on analytics? Is it something you think that has improved the game? Where has it improved, and where has it lost a part of the game of baseball? I've had a couple of conversations with some baseball guys, a couple of close friends. Where do you stand on the state of baseball and its analytics?
I think that's a really good question, and I'm always so torn on it because a part of me thinks that the quote unquote science behind it is very cool. I think it's I think it's given some guys a resurgence of some sort, like um some pitcher. I mean, perfect example. I mean, Garrett Cole. Like, he was an okay pitcher, like fairly solid, during his Pittsburgh Pirate days. Then all of a sudden he goes to Houston. Analytics say this, that, and the other. He changes things a little bit, and boom, he is the best pitcher in the American League. And it's so interesting because I feel like it's helped so many baseball players, but it also has diminished the game quite a bit. I think, I'm tired of seeing exit velocity, and tired of seeing guys swing for the fences all the time, and tired of seeing, you know, runners on base and, a perfect opportunity to bunt and move them over, and it doesn't happen. It's kind of an evolution in front of our eyes in some sense. And I say that because you look at the NBA, for instance, we're seeing an evolution there where teams want the three ball and they would rather take the triple rather than a mid range jumper or even a simple layup. Like, I've seen it before too, where teams will, draw up an inbound, late in the game, and they're trying to draw up a three rather than, a quick entry down low or something like that to a bigger guy who can bank it off the glass and in and get your team within a couple more points. They'd rather take the three and make it, even closer and even a slimmer of a margin. So we're seeing the evolution of sports, I feel like, especially when it comes to basketball and especially when it comes to baseball. Um, Look, it is, as long as they don't change the game that much, I'm okay with it. Yesterday on our show Between the Lines that I host with our buddy Dan Doherty, we talked about how it's been nice that Major League Baseball's trying to make some rule changes, but at the same time, it's almost become too much.
Hmm.
Not just Major League Baseball, but baseball in general. And this came because the Pioneer League decided, which is now an independent league in baseball, they decided they're going to have an extra inning home run contest rather than playing extra innings. And to me, it was just like, I don't know, like it's just so much being thrown at your face. And I feel like with analytics, that's sometimes the case too, is that so much of this stuff is just being thrown at your face, um, to where it's overwhelming. And, trying to decipher what to do in certain situations, we've grown away from, hey, this is what the situation used to call for. Let's just go with that. Let's just talk about the sack bunt. Let's just talk about the squeeze play. Like, I don't even remember the last time I saw a squeeze play in baseball.
Hmm.
So it's a little things like that. So I do see some negatives to it, but like I said, I do see some positives to it because I feel like it's really helping out a lot of ball players and allowing them to have some good numbers and some good careers out there.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, just before my eyes, and the short life I've had, there's been an evolution in all the sports.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Even just in the past 10 years, I mean, like you said, in basketball, it's now shifting to a three. It favors the offense. We're also favoring the offense in football. Football is so much less physical than it was, and the penalties they throw and protecting the quarterback. And then in baseball now, you got these defensive shifts. It's a complete evolution in all different phases, and it seems to always favor the offense in baseball. I don't know. It's such a strikeout home run kind of league right now.
Yeah.
My biggest thing about it is the science behind it's cool. Like you said with Garrett Cole and completely changing his pitching motion, becoming a better pitcher. The science behind it, I think, is fascinating. It's the losing the younger generation of people who watch baseball. It's becoming we're losing viewers day by day in the game of baseball. So my question to you is, how important are these stars and big personalities that we have in the game right now that's going to help Major League Baseball? I mean, just for example, just the interaction we saw this past weekend between Fernando Tatis Jr. and Trevor Bauer. Those are two of the biggest personalities in this game. How much are they going to help this game? Because that was fun to see, and that just specifically that Dodgers-Padres series and that new rivalry that's shaping is going to be very interesting. But how important is that?
It's everything to Major League Baseball. And kind of going off of your point where it feels like viewership, or I mean, that has been the trend with viewership going down and listenership going down and everything. I think over the last year it is evolved into more of an appreciated and viewed and watched sport. Like, the numbers don't lie, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but they were just released about what Sunday Night Baseball did for that Padres Dodgers game. And it was, somewhere in the vicinity of 2.1 million viewers, which might not sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things. But for Major League Baseball, that was a huge boost in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of people who tuned in to watch an extra inning game, it soared by something along the lines of, like a couple 100,000 people or something. Like, it was absurd. And the reason why I feel like that's important to think about is because it's game number, I don't know. Let's just throw it out there, though. Game number 21 of the season on a Sunday night with West Coast teams. Whoop-de frickin' do. But people were glued in and people wanted to watch. And I think part of the reason why, though, going back to your point, it's because of the big personalities. It's because of the Fernando Tatis Juniors. It's because of the Manny Machados. It's because of the Cody Bellingers, even though he's hurt right now. It's because of the Trevor Bauers of the world, the Clayton Kershaws. I mean, I feel like I feel like now we're in a spot where baseball needs to take advantage of all that's being presented to them. And what's being presented to them is the opportunity to grow the game. And one of the ways to do that is to let these guys just ball out.
Yep.
Like, if somebody hits a home run off of you and pimps it out a little bit, don't be that pitcher who wants to retaliate and hit the guy next time around, because nobody's going to remember that part. What everybody's going to remember is that little strut that the hitter did out of the batter's box because he got you. And if you're a pitcher, by all means, if you strike somebody out in a big time situation, or even just, have a quick 1-2-3 inning and strike a guy out with some high heat, if you want to shimmy off that mound, go for it, man. Like, you deserve it. You just got out of a situation there. So I feel like there are so many big personalities in baseball, and part of the reason why is because we have the access to them like never before. Like, back in the day when I was growing up, the only interaction you ever had with a ball player was when you were actually at the ball field and got a chance to see them up live, close, and personal. Now there's social media, which is running wild. Ball players are on Twitch playing video games for a couple of hours and interacting with their fans that way. Like, the list goes on and on and on of ways that baseball is in some ways growing its players, and that's because of how the world is nowadays. So I think baseball just needs to roll with this, and they need to run with this. And I think the bigger the personality, the better it is, the more excited people will get, and the more it's going to make kids want to play the game of baseball.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, and if a guy wants to pimp out a home run, let him do it. I think that's huge, and I think this is the pros. I'm gonna go back to something a couple weeks ago that happened because these you have to take it on the chin. If you give up a dinger, you can't get mad if a guy's pimping it out, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we're
right.
not, this is Major League Baseball, and it brings me back to a couple weeks ago, which I think is a thing that's killing Major League Baseball, I believe it was the Reds and someone else, Nick Castellanos. Did you see that? Nick Castellanos got suspended 2 games.
I heard about
Slid
it.
into
That's right.
home, and he got up. All he did, he just kind of went, because they had an interaction earlier where he got hit with a pitch or something like that. He slides into home. They kind of he's on top of the catcher, and he gets up and he just does something like that. It wasn't like anything wild. He didn't punch him in the face or anything.
Yeah.
And it started everyone's taking everything so personal, and then he gets suspended. So it's like stuff like that. You just gotta play the game, and you got look back at the oh my gosh, the brawls they used to have back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s. You can't do that anymore. That's how much it's evolved. That's not happening anymore, and I think that stuff was exciting for fans.
Yeah, and the thing is you've got to remember that there was back in the day an old way to play the game, and that was with your head down, nose to the grindstone, hard hitting, just do your job sort of mentality. Now, I say, let's face it, baseball is a man versus man sport. It's me versus you, and then everybody else gets involved if the ball gets in play. And it's okay if you win that battle to show off a little bit and be excited that you won that battle, because that's essentially what baseball is in my eyes. You've got a pitcher going up against a hitter. Then you've got everybody else around to try and make something happen if the ball is put in play. And if some dude takes another dude long, then so be it. Celebrate it. It's baseball has become so interesting, and I feel like there are so many top tier caliber players, and we're seeing just some of the young talent right now just flourish in front of our eyes, that I don't know if Major League Baseball needs to worry about any of these rule changes, or if Major League Baseball has to worry about pace of play anymore. I think they need to just see the opportunity that's presented in front of them with these players who are high flyers and realize, oh, bleep, we've got a great product out here. Let's try to market the what out of this, because I think it could help Major League Baseball in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the NFL a couple years ago, and they decided hey, we're not going to throw a flag anymore. If you want to do a touchdown dance and do a team celebration,
Think of all of the celebrations we've seen with teams now. I mean, that is the thing, like a planned team celebration that's going to be on everybody's TikTok and everybody's Instagram and everybody's who's watching Sports Center. I mean, it's just going to make the rounds on social media, and it's going to grow the game. It's going to make people excited and interested.
Yep. Just like with everything, things are changing. We got to go. You got to be adaptable. I think that's a huge part of this, and I think that all the leagues need to follow suit with that. But with that being said, I was going to touch on the Yankees a little bit because they've kind of dug themselves into a little bit of a hole. I'm going to stay away from that for the time being, Nick, because just because. But I want to get to you and your life covering high school sports. We sit here and we can talk about pro sports for hours and hours. You've taken the time to. You do such a great job covering as much as you can in that area for ESPN Ithaca and all the surrounding schools in that area. And, me being a former athlete in that area, it's funny, you used to call some of my games when I was still in high school.
Don't remind me. I feel ancient now, man.
But, I mean, what is it you find so fascinating about, high school sports that makes you come home every day with a smile on your face and doing what you love? Or even reverse of that, walking into the station every morning?
It's the people, man. I mean, it sounds so cliche to go with that answer, but it's so true. And we've been lucky to have a lot of good people on the courts and on the fields, and we've been lucky enough to have great administrators that we've worked with, and that's what I think makes my job so enjoyable, and makes things just so fun. It's not necessarily what happens out there on the field, it's more about the people, and it gives them a sense of excitement when oh, ESPN Ithaca is going to be at our game, and I get that, but I find it more rewarding that they're so appreciative of us, just kind of like what you said, like the words that you said. I appreciate that so much. And um but at the end of the day, it's the people, and sometimes it's the stories that you start learning about, some of these athletes and coaches and players and everything. Like I remember, for perfect example, going back years and years ago, getting ready to call a baseball game, I noticed that a lot of players on one of the high school teams, they were all wearing, the color pink, which, usually signifies breast cancer awareness or even just cancer awareness in general. And they were wearing wristbands and socks and everything like that. And I, thought something of it. I'm like, okay, interesting. They're going to be doing some sort of, honoring of, cancer or whatever it may be. And then I ended up talking to the head coach of the baseball team, and I, said, "Hey, is you guys celebrating, like not celebrating, but bringing awareness to breast cancer or something like that?" And he's like, "No, actually, if you notice, I won't say his name, but my assistant coach isn't here today, and the reason why is because his dad's getting surgery to remove cancer. So the guys thought it would be nice to, to honor, coach's dad."
Mhm.
So I thought that was great. I ended up saying something about it during the broadcast, just in simply saying like, "Hey, we're wishing this coach and his family, the best of wishes and well wishes during this time. Thinking about you. Hope everything goes well." Not even thinking that he's listening to the broadcast, like not even thinking about it.
Mhm.
Later that night, I end up getting an email from this coach who says, "Hey, thank you so much for the kind words. I was actually listening to the game as my father was in surgery. It meant a lot to me that you said what you said as we were waiting for, one of the scariest things to happen essentially in their lives." And that to me was man, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Like that to me is the rewarding aspect of it, and that's what makes the people around the community and the area so great. And that's what makes me, want to do it day in and day out, game in and game out. That's what makes it so special.
Yeah, and that's something that has really made me fall in love with broadcasting. Nick, is that
Yeah.
you you don't realize it at the time until something happens like that, where you feel like you're just there, you're hanging out, you're calling a baseball game, but every word you say matters in
Yeah.
one way, shape, or form, and I think that's the beauty of it, and covering something as uh, beautiful and small as high school sports is that you can touch a lot of people, because especially like for the teams you cover in that area, like these are small town kids mostly.
Yeah.
They're very small cities, if there's any cities, maybe outside of Ithaca. They, a lot of these kids aren't going on to play professional sports. This is what they have, is the life
Yeah.
they have as a high school athlete, and those kind of stories are really special.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's just it. And don't get me wrong, like the product on the field or the court or whatever it may be, it's a blast. It's tremendous to watch, and we've seen some wild games. Like we're talking about some of the wildest games you could possibly ask for, and we've been lucky in that sense. Some people might think, oh, with high school sports, you get a blowout or you get like a boring game. Like no, some of these kids just play their hearts out. And I've seen it from with my own eyes where kids are leaving it all out there on the court or whatever it may be. And that's the fun part about it, is that, we're trying to bring a bit of we're trying to bring a spotlight to these athletes and these coaches and these players.
Mhm.
Um, and we're doing it to celebrate them. At the end of the day, it's our job to celebrate them. We're lucky with what we've got in the community, and that's what makes this gig so fun.
Yeah, and I talked to you last year about I talked to you about when when New York State canceled the rest of the season.
Yeah, right.
And I did a story on Newfield and Marathon, who you guys are covering, that I was a part of, a couple of the Marathon and Newfield broadcasts, and they got their season cut short, well on their way to Final Fours.
Mhm.
Um, you can tell how much that matters to those kids and how heartbroken they are when they can't
Oh
finish
yeah.
a season that they started. There's something so unifying, about sports in its purest form, Nick, that like, especially in high school, you know, with these athletes, even in the good moments and the bad moments, when they rise up, when they fall down, win or loss, somewhere in there you can remind them that there's some kind of greatness inside of them, whether it's being an athlete or not. Playing those sports is so huge. And, like I said, a very small percentage of kids go on to play college, even college or pro sports.
Yeah.
High school is where it ends for a lot of these kids, but they put every single ounce that they have of themselves into it. So what is so special about that? Knowing that a lot of these kids, that senior day that they have out on the baseball field, out on the basketball court, is one of their last games they're ever going to play competitively. But you're there talking about it.
It's fun, man. It goes back to the idea that it's rewarding. And I think what you just said was perfect and really encapsulated how I feel in my thoughts on it. It's for a lot of these student athletes, this is it for them. A lot of them aren't gonna go on, and some of them just don't want to. Some of them, maybe would rather go D1, or that's another conversation for another time and stuff like that. But regardless, like, just the fun in all of it, and just being able to bring their story to light, and be able to call their game and do all the action and call the play by play. It's so fun. And if it's a kid's first game of their career and they have a big performance, that's awesome. If it's their senior night and they're getting playing time or they're getting the start for the first time all season long because it's senior night, that's awesome too. um there's never been a moment that's really made me just kind of like be like, oh, this is what we're doing. No, like, it's every moment of these games and these broadcasts have always been so worthwhile for me and to me. And I say that sincerely because I know just how much it means to a lot of other people who are tuning in, and how much it means to those kids out there. So
Yeah, and obviously, like, Nick, I've done as much as I could in calling as many games as I can. I try to move around, and I had my time at Medalist College. I called a lot of crazy games, but like a couple of the just great atmospheres have been in some of the high schools around our area in central
yeah.
New York. There, some of those sectional games. I mean, I spent how many amazing moments I had in that Moravia gym. But
Yep.
even just last year, before the season got canceled, there's a sectional game. I believe it was between Candor and Newfield. That gym was unbelievable, and I'm like, that just got me so pumped up. It's like, that's just what the local high school sports can do. It just, like, I don't know what it is. It brings a ridiculous amount of energy that tops some like college programs. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely. I remember calling, this was years and years ago, a Trumansburg Newfield. I think it was a sectional semifinal game, um, at Newfield. They had to actually sell tickets to the game
Mhm.
before the game. Like, we're talking about, call the district office or the high school office, whatever it was, request your tickets, and then pick them up later on before the game even happens. I ended up showing up at this game maybe an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. Maybe that's a stretch, but it was definitely a while before I had to be on the air with the pregame show. I kid you not, Cole. There were people lining up from the entrance all around like the school
Yeah.
just to get into this game that was still an hour and a half away from tip time.
Hmm.
Like there were so many people that the concession stand workers thought to themselves, this is a great opportunity for us to make some extra money for people who've been waiting outside for this game to start for like the last couple of hours. Let's sell them some chips and some drinks and some hot dogs or whatever. Like I'll never forget just how nutty the crowd was that night. And I've seen so many other crazy crowds and, fun crowds and everything like that, but I'll never forget that moment for a sectional semifinal game where the crowd was quite literally out the door waiting for hours for this game to start so that they could get a prime seat inside the Sioux France gymnasium. I mean, and that's just so cool. And like I said, I've seen it so many times with so many different high schools, basketball especially, and it makes the game so exciting, and not just for the players but also for the broadcasters too, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you called some wacky ones with Moravia as well.
Oh yeah.
We could talk on and on about that. And I mean, obviously we got into that in the documentary, a bit ago, but all right, Nick, we're going to wrap this up with something I'll call a fast five. We're going to give some
Okay.
rapid fire answers.
All right.
And then you're going to do the best you can, all right? They're
All
not
right,
hard, I
wish me luck.
promise you. I'm not going to bust your brain or anything.
You
All
say
right.
that now, just wait and see what happens.
All right. Well, speaking of what the moments you were just talking about, I got this is before I knew you were going to say that, but favorite game/moment that you've ever been a part of called on ESPN Ithaca.
um it was gosh, Cole, you're putting me on the spot with this one. With all due respect to everybody, the Moravia state championship win against Lake George, which wasn't even like a crazy game.
Mhm.
Um, to see them win a state championship with Dustin Mondix on the sideline, on the bench with his team celebrating, without a doubt, the best. Here was a team that was facing adversity. Here's a team that had their backs against the walls a couple of times during the postseason, and they found ways to win. And it culminates with their first ever state championship after trying for so many years to get that illustrious, just to even get to a state championship game.
Yep.
Um, that was something special, especially with somebody like Dustin who was there to see it and be a part of it. And I'll never forget the post game interview we did with him, where he basically crashed the interview and said, "I told you so. I told you we're going to win this state title," and it was so cool to me. So, with all due respect to all the other schools and everything and games that I've called, that moment was pretty special for me.
And for you, was that the first state title you ever called? Like the championship? Like, was that
I
it?
don't remember off the top of my head, if I'm being honest. I've called a lot of state championship games, and I've called a lot of state championship titles. So I
Gotten
really don't
lucky.
remember. I have been lucky, and that goes back to the idea that we've had some great teams around here, and so many talented student athletes and coaches.
All right. Next up, biggest accomplishment for you on air.
Biggest accomplishment.
Whether
Oh
it could have been in
gosh.
college, an award. Was it one of the awards you've received at ESPN Ithaca? What's the best one?
No, I those awards I appreciate it. I really do. I'm not I don't know, Cole, because here's the thing. I don't relish in the accomplishments. I'm somebody who's very much appreciative of them all. I'm very humble to receive them, but I don't know. I don't know if I have a biggest accomplishment. I mean, maybe it's just the idea of, being able to do what I do.
Hmm.
As crazy as that sounds, day after day, game after game, whatever it may be, just the accomplishment of being able to put a quality broadcast on the air each and every day for people.
Yeah. Great answer. That's your best answer ever.
Oh, thank you.
No, really good. Good stuff. Next one. Favorite player growing up. It could be in any sport. Favorite athlete growing up.
Bernie Williams and Ken Griffey Jr., without a doubt. Something special about Byrne. Loved that guy. Switch hitter, just tremendous. And then who didn't want to be Junior Griffey when they grew up? Backwards hat, that swing, everything was brilliant about that guy.
Yeah, I wish I got more of him. I was a late bloomer on that on that train.
You missed out.
Best ballpark / stadium you've ever been to. It could be anything.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a great one. I would have to say PNC Park down in Pittsburgh.
I've heard good things about that. I've heard anyone who's ever gone there said it's beautiful.
It's a very nice venue. The rivers are there. It's a pretty remarkable place. Just has a nice intimate feel to it, even though it's a big old ballpark. PNC Park, home of the Pirates. That's what I'm going to go with.
Gotcha. I got to get there. That's one I've not gone to. I
do.
knocked out the entire AL East, and then I just knocked out San Diego a couple weeks ago. I got a long ways to go. Long ways to go. All right, last one, Nick. Best part about having, a relationship and a fiance and living with dogs?
Well, what's Common doing right now? He's just licking out of the bowl. I think he was causing some chaos a little while ago. It's not just the dogs, too. We have 3 cats. And don't get me started on how we have 3 cats, but that's another story for another time. Long story short, we thought one wasn't with us anymore. Lo and behold, it was with us, and then we ended up getting a 3rd one because we thought the one wasn't with us anymore.
Okay.
So that's what happened with that. It's great, man. I've got a full zoo with my fiance Courtney. It's awesome. Like, there are some days where you just want to just rip your hair out because they're just chaotic and everything like that. But I love them. They're the best. They like to get in some mischief and mayhem, that's for sure. But what animals don't do that?
Exactly. I was gonna say, what pet would they be if they didn't cause any havoc?
Exactly.
But, all right, Nick. Well, that's awesome. Hey, before you go, I gotta ask you, how's my man Cody Flick doing at the station? I haven't talked to him in a little bit.
Killing it. Make sure you check out at ESPN Ithaca on our on Instagram. Just make sure you check us out, because if you want to see the best trick shot challenge video that we've had submitted to us, Cody Flick, I'll just leave it at that, nailed it, much like he used to nail his 3-pointers when he played for Moravia basketball.
Absolutely. Love to hear it. Remember those days. And hey, what's on your shirt? All I see is some guy. Some guy named Randy. This is when Randy Arozarena basically went wild against the Yankees in the playoffs, and people were just like, hey, this is just some guy named Randy. Never heard of him, but he's blasting all these home runs. So it's a great representation.
Gotta show some love for the opponent who absolutely walloped the Yankees last postseason.
Yep. Respect to Randy.
That's for sure.
All right, Nick, man, this was great. This was a great talk. I'm glad he came on, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Count on it, man. You're the best.
All right, Nick. Hey, guys, that was Nick Karski. He's voice of ESPN Radio, and I'm sure we'll bring him back again sometime. Cole's Corner. We'll see you later.
Oh!